Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy any investment based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research.
Hello and welcome to the Sunday Roast. It's Sunday the 19th of May. I'm Phil Carroll.
And I'm Kevin Hornsby.
And it's great to be back in the swing of things. Roaring Kitty has woken, Kev.
Has she?
Have you seen the news this week? The meme stocks are back. That somebody
Yes. No, I was
Roaring Kitty, basically. It was
GameStop,
and all that. Like, basically, it started from a picture I don't know. There's probably an AI generated graphic of somebody moving in the position in a chair from the relaxed position to what they call the game position, and a Roaring Kitty account woke up, which people thought was some sort of subliminal message that GameStop was going to go off again, because obviously we've all seen the movie, or most people keen on investing have seen Dumb Money, and there was a rise of about, what did it do? It went from about $8 a stock to 80, 90, maybe even touched about $90, I think, before it all came crashing down. But we'll talk more at length of that. So very interesting to see the likes of AMC as well moving on the back of that as well, and all these meme stocks arriving.
Yeah, I mean, it went a bit crazy, didn't it? It wasn't huge buys, I don't think, either. It's just a lot of people, wasn't it, going for it. And I think AMC jumped on the bandwagon and raised $250 million in the midst of it all. So good luck to them.
Director dumped a load of stock, and they also used it as a liquidity event, didn't they, for a capital raise? So that was interesting to see.
So, but we see that the market is definitely starting to come alive. Anyway, certainly, I think in the small cap sector, we're still seeing a few things move.
FTSE's bust through. We talked about this last week. The FTSE's doing very, very well, isn't it? It's very buoyant at the moment. We're at all-time highs there. So it's not the fact that so much that the markets are broken in that respect. The larger companies are doing exceedingly well. The large exchanges like FTSE 100, 250 are doing well. But it's just a small cap space, isn't it? I think so many investors are just burnt down on it now. They're just worn out. That there's not a lot of that liquidity that's moving and sloshing around into these nano cap companies.
Yeah, but it will come. It will come. I mean, I know we had this discussion a while ago when we were talking, and it's sort of, I'm the Mr. Positive and you're Mr. Negative. But as I see,
I'm a realist.
Negative, and I'm positive. When I look at the figures now, we've just seen silver bust through $30 an ounce. We're seeing gold going back up towards 2,400. We've seen copper bust through £5 or 10,000 plus, and I moved up to probably 10,000 to 10,300 per ton. We've seen a lot. We've seen the dollar come off a little bit, a couple of percent in terms of its value against a basket of other currencies. So a lot of the things we've talked about coming to fruition. And, we're in a world, I think, that, real things, as in resources, are going to be in demand. We're not playing a game anymore. You need these real things to make all of this thing, all of the things that are required, whether that is an electric transition or a transition to electric vehicle, whether it is simply that we still have probably more than a third of the world that needs refrigerators, needs appliances in their house, etc., all of which need copper, all of which need steel in most situations. So, and the fact that there will be more cars, whether those cars were electric cars, whether those cars are combustible engine cars, they still require a lot. And maybe that we're going to have small economic electric cars going forward. Because I don't know about you, but I think this luxury end of the market of electric cars, people have been burnt, like, seriously. I mean, you're talking about, you're the car guy, but I mean, I think you could have spent 80,000, 90,000 pounds on a very high-end electric car. And what's it worth now, 3 years later?
Well, actually worthless is probably the answer, because the problem they've got is a lot of the dealers, would you believe, you buy a Porsche Panamera or a Taycan, which is the Taycan is their fully EV sort of flagship model that they do, which performance kind of, it's like the electric Panamera. And basically 90 grand on one of those 2 years ago, you want to chop it in or even part exit or even get the dealer to buy it back. They're not even taking orders on them. They're not even taking the cars back in and buying them back off the punters. So they're effectively worthless. Because if you've bought it on a lease plan or a PCP, you ain't going to want to sell that privately and take a 20 grand haircut on what you owe on the final, final balloon payment on it. You're going to
but you can hand it back to them.
You could hand it back to them probably and lose everything, and then end up being a 10 to 20 grand deficit on what, but a lot of people were wanting to trade them in against and put down them against the collateral against another sort of lease, going back. People are going back into diesels, Kev, because of this reason, because they're worth more at the end of these lease deals. So it's an interesting one. Just going back to what you said about silver, I've been watching silver for the last couple of years. And it's done in the last 6 months. It's done very well. It's bust through those 30. The futures went through like $30, which is very interesting. It's whether or not it can maintain above that $30 mark, which seems to be like some sort of like a threshold or a sort of mental threshold on that on the commodity itself. But there was a really interesting one. So executives from Canadian and international silver mining producers that operate in the country have basically appealing to the government to recognise silver as a critical mineral. And they put together a letter addressed to Energy and Natural Resources Minister Jonathan Wilkinson, which outlined the reasoning behind the push for silver. Because do you know how much silver is required to produce 1 gig of solar power through these, these voltaic cells on the solar panels? Do you know how much silver is required?
I don't know, but probably
685,000 ounces of silver are required for just 1 gigawatt, which is, it's a lot of energy, but it's also not a lot in the grand scheme of things if we're going to use it as, basically look for other resources, other methods to, for non-renewable energy sources. So that was interesting. So global silver demand was estimated last year at 1.17 billion ounces, and only half was for industrial use. And the fastest growing industrial use of silver is obviously in these PVs, these photovoltaics, with demanded 161.1 million ounces in 2023, which is 14% of the global silver demand. So if it's recognised by the first government in Canada, then it will surely follow on around the world and become recognised and become into this critical mineral list.
How's it used in those? Is it sort of the shiny thing, if you like, or how's the silver used?
Yeah, the photovoltaic cells themselves, the actual cells that absorb the
heat,
the light, the solar energy, and also used in EV as well. It's used as a conductor. It's one of the best. Copper is talked about for its conductivity, but silver is the number one conductor.
Yeah, but obviously you're not going to use silver necessarily as a conductor unless you don't have the copper, or you only need a tiny amount of it, I suppose. So the silver-gold ratio is the other issue that we're looking at when we're talking about the silver price. You're talking about now a ratio of about 80 to 1, even at $30. And, historically, it's never really got much higher than that. Then normally it comes down towards the 50 mark.
Yeah. Gold's run away and silver hasn't done it anywhere near the catching up. There was a really good article, I think Goldman Sachs put out about $100 silver. Do you think, and I think it's very possible in the coming 2 years that silver will reach $100?
Well, if it does, then we're talking about $5,000 gold as well.
Yeah.
Which I don't think it's probable, but it could happen. Can gold effectively double from here? Because that's really all we're talking about. I don't know. If we go down this line that seems to be happening of the BRICS nations coming together, creating and announcing their new currency, which seems like it's quite likely. We're going to be talking about Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Iran has joined, Egypt has joined, and quite a few other nations have joined, I think, as well. And they're talking that that's going to be connected to gold and oil in terms of its backing. So all of a sudden then, do we have a much greater valuation on gold? And then subsequently, silver will be dragged with the gold anyway, because we can't really have this massive difference. But the thing that really went on a bit of a run this week was copper. We saw copper go from sort of 4.6 region, I think it was, all the way up to 5 point something at one point. I think it's settled in and around the 4.9 to 5 by the end of the week. But all of those figures are sort of $10,000 per ton or more. And effectively now these copper producers are going to be making money. And if you look at the futures for the next 3 years, they're all well in excess of $10,000. Goldman Sachs is saying that he thinks that copper is going to rise to $12,000 per ton this year by the end of 2024. and average more than 12,000 next year. So, when you look at some of the companies like Jubilee Metals, which is on the cusp of starting to produce huge amounts of copper, already does produce copper, but, it's going to be scaled up significantly over the next 1 year to 2 years with Rowan and with the slag project in Mofalera. It's, the potential upside, because I was having this conversation with someone, when something goes up, say, from $8,000 to $9,000, that whole $1,000 goes to the bottom line. There's no extra costs in this mining side of things. No. So if it cost you $5,000 before and you were making $3,000, well, then now you're making $4,000 or $5,000, go to $10,000. So your profit's gone from 3 to 4 to 5. So if it goes from 3 to 4, you're making 33% extra profit. If it goes from 3 to 5, you're making 66% extra profit.
Yeah.
So those things are going to be exponentially increasing for a lot of these copper stocks. Yeah, and then you've got the exploration ground as well, because there's been some stuff in the news there also about Rio, that Rio have realized they can't just go out and buy copper mines. They don't exist. Yeah. So they have to go for the exploration.
You see the article Bloomberg put out in the week, basically the reason why there was a big spike in or a rush in the price for copper was that in the US there was a short squeeze in New York that rocked the metals market, and the traders over there were basically rushing to secure the metal and then ship it to the US. And the US copper is actually trading as much as $1,200 a ton above the London levels over there. So there's a massive dislocation between the prices for copper traded in New York and then the other commodity exchanges around the world. And as I say, that's what's really put a spike in that global market price for the metal and prompted that frantic dash for supplies to ship to the US themselves. So, I mean, what does that say?
Says there's not enough of it.
Absolutely.
There's not enough of it, and this gap's only going to get bigger. So if the gap gets bigger, the profits are going to get bigger. And I think what you're going to have also is a race for the ground. You're going to have a race for the ground. All I can say is that, I know I've been saying it for a long time, African Pioneer has great assets, great ground. Galileo has great assets, great ground for copper. And Extract has great assets and great ground. Bazant also has, a huge project in the Philippines, and also the stuff in Namibia with Hope and Garrow. So, those four alone have got to see some rises based on what we've seen. A rise in African Pioneer this week, haven't we? I think you said it was up 25% or something like that.
It's up a bit, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But nothing in Galileo and nothing in Extract, which is just bizarre considering.
Yeah. I think Castillo Copper as well, CCZ, had about a 50% rise as well. So it is targeting, some of the stocks are seeing that. I mean, Jubilee, the one you mentioned, that they've had a run probably up about 15 to 20% in the last 5 to 7 days trading. Castillo Copper, CCZ, they're up about 50%. So we are seeing it ripple through to some of these copper miners on the markets. But yeah, maybe there will be, as I say, African Pioneer has moved up a little bit, probably 15 to 20% in the last week or so. Let's see what. Let's have a look at a couple of the news items this week. Water companies. I mean, this is probably you don't hear too much about this, but this is all over the media at the moment. It's on I've got the paper here. It's on the front page today. I guess the first question is, in this weather right now in the UK, a bit of warm, would you think twice about going swimming in a lake or the sea, or even paddleboarding in the waterways of the UK?
I wouldn't, but you're about to tell me I should.
You'd swim in them, yeah. I mean, that's a decision you at the end of the day you've got to make yourself. But I certainly wouldn't right now without doing some sort of water testing, which a lot of these cold water swimmers are actually taking their own water testing kits. Mainly because the UK's water firms are dumping raw sewage on their own doorstep in the worst year on record. Yeah, you heard it. Britain's water companies are now discharging so much sewage into the nation's rivers. There's a 54% increase in 2023 that they're not able to tackle major discharges just down the road from their own company headquarters. England's 9 water firms pump raw sewage into the rivers nearest their corporate headquarters for a total of 56,000 hours last year, analysis by the I newspaper has shown, underlying the scale of pollution, including illegal spills, and how little has been invested to solve the problem. The worst offenders include Severn Trent in Birmingham, Northumbrian Water in Durham, and Wessex Water in Bath, where the Avon is one of the country's most polluted rivers. United Utilities, which has been caught illegally pumping up to 10 million litres of untreated sewage into Windermere, announces annual profits of £518 million. And in Brixham, we saw the news, devastating news this week, that the Devon residents have had to visit A&E and are told to bottle their water for 6 more days because of this breakout of this basically virus, or not even a virus, but basically there's this crystallogram with kind of nail. Let me just get the name of it. Yeah, there's been an outbreak of this cryptosporidiosis parasite. It's a parasite that is basically being found in the tap water. And I believe they've detected it back to basically the feces of wild animals that may have somehow got in contamination through some sort of damaged air valve on the pipe, which feeds into this Hillhead reservoir. So, I mean, what has it come to? What is the answer, Kev? Do you think the answer is, do we need a nationalisation of these, have been privatised water companies? Do they need nationalising and putting under the government, and actually so that they can be somebody can singly be accountable for discharging raw sewage into our clean riverway? I don't understand it, and how that anybody who runs these companies can actually think it's acceptable to discharge raw sewage into seas, rivers, lakes, whatever you want to call it. I just think it's despicable.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, I wonder how much more that we know now that we didn't know.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of it is just we seem to know more. There's more information about, we can know what people are doing, or these companies are doing more now than we ever have done. And the reality of the situation is that, yeah, they're putting profit over the environment without doubt. This is what's happening. And, do
you think nationalisation would make would bring any changes?
No, because I think you would actually find that it would be run by worse or more incompetent people than currently is the case. And probably, rather than having profit, we would then have the public actually having to put their hands in the pockets to pay a lot. I think there has to be some sort of pseudo way of doing this, So it's maybe listed, but it's not.
Yeah.
Or it is listed, but you can't make profit from it in terms of share, but you can have a dividend or whatever happens to be.
I think that's what it's down to, isn't it? It's down to pleasing the shareholders more than the people, that they serve the customers. So like, shareholders are there, they want the dividends, they want the money, they want, and a lot of these are actually, the mad part of this is a lot of them are actually foreign investors who are actually, Australian investors who are actually getting the dividends, who don't even have to live next door to this effluent that's being pumped into their waterways. So that element, then the lack of investment is the bit that troubles me. Is like, near us, there's been some transporters there that have got, clean water, that they're pumping the effluent into these. They're being driven off to presumably a local sewage works. And it's a 24/7 operation with these trucks on standby, with the engines running for sometimes, all hours of the day, disrupted. And it's like, why didn't you invest in the infrastructure to make sure that this wasn't an issue in the first place, and repair these pipes that are maybe broken or whatever? I think there's a fundamental a lack of investment or underinvestment in a lot of these water companies, and that's what the part of this problem is.
Yeah, I was going to say get off your soapbox, but the soap might help the water. You never know.
The detergent. The other news. Let's move on to this one. This was interesting. You've probably seen it. Vladimir Putin thanked the Chinese leader Xi Jinping yesterday for China's proposals on ending the war in Ukraine, which have been rejected by Kiev and its Western supporters as largely following the Kremlin's line. So the summit was over there. You probably saw him. Putin was in Beijing. He met Xi Jinping. They put together this no limits partnership. They were stood there with the books. They'd signed them, and presumably there's going to be movement of trade deals going on there. China claims to have taken a neutral position in the conflict, but it has backed Moscow's contentions that Russia was provoked into attacking Ukraine by the West and continues to supply Russia with key components that Moscow needs for its production of weapons. A joint statement after Mr. Putin and Mrs. Xi met said that both sides believe that for a sustainable settlement of the Ukrainian crisis is necessary to eliminate its root causes. So what do you make of that, Putin in China?
Yeah, well, we've known this for the last couple of years and maybe longer, isn't it? That China and Russia are growing closer and closer together in their alliances, both from a BRICS point of view and also from using the resources point of view. I mean, it brings us nicely onto one of those things that is a bit sad in terms of the market, is that one of the things that happened when, Russia was basically banned from excuse my French, farting probably. It basically couldn't do anything. So what did it do? It flooded the market with many, many, many different types of resources. But one of the main ones it did was metallurgical coal. It flooded the market. It flooded the Indian market. It flooded the Chinese market. Flooded the Australian market, which brought the price crashing down, and it never really recovered. And that was one of the downfalls of Ben's Creek in the USA, which this week, sadly, we've seen that it's probably the end. I can't say that for certain, but it looks like it is the end. It can tell you that you can have a good resource. The asset is there. It was functioning very well. And, just not the profit margin in it there now. So therefore, it doesn't work. We visited a couple of times. Yeah, so it's very sad. There's lots of people.
When you've been there and met some of the staff there.
Lots of people working there in an area that, desperately needed the jobs. And I can't say that there wasn't other issues that didn't help the matter. But really, ultimately, this was down to a resource that was valued at X, and they couldn't produce it for less than that X. So ultimately, it doesn't work. Now, will it work in the future? I'm pretty sure it probably will. Ben's Creek as an ongoing mine will probably work without when met coal recovers, but because it's going to be required, just like we discussed earlier, lots of things are going to be required. Resources, lots of steel to build these cars, lots of steel to build bridges, roads, whatever else is required, houses, all of these things are required. And all of the economies that are growing, whether it be India, whether it be China, whether it be African countries, all still growing. And they're going to require more and more of these materials. So, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's same. It's like you see a lot of these minerals, commodities, whatever you want to call them, come in. Have a moment where they have a point where they hit a peak or all-time high or 5-year high, and then it becomes economically viable to mine or produce that material and then get an offtake in place and sell it. And it worked for a year and a half in terms of money coming in. But once there's a drop in the value of that commodity, then there's a point where you're no longer profitable, or you fall below break even point and can't sustain it. In fact, there was another one this week that unfortunately suspended its shares, and that was Hornsby Minerals, that they were unable to secure interest in that full financing that was needed to complete a 100% owned Aragu nickel project. And then I think is that after a period of obviously discussions with those secured creditors and existing and new potential investors, potentially finding different scenarios with a view to maybe restructuring the solution to attempt to achieve the best possible recovery for those creditors, but were obviously minimizing potential liabilities. The board then announced I think it was on the 16th of May, that they regrettably concluded that Hornsby should be placed into administration in order to seek to preserve the value of the business for creditors and other stakeholders. So obviously they appointed Jeff Rowley and Chad Griffin of the advisory firm FRP as administrators in the process of making such an appointment. So sadly they were suspended from effect from I think like 6 p.m. on the 15th. So another one there, in Brazil, their nickel project that you can't even get the funding. That they weren't even in the production phase. They were looking at securing the interest through full financing, which obviously we saw that the original capex went from 80 million to then 200 and then even higher, didn't it? So it was almost like that was an underestimation of the cost of the capex. But very sad to see.
It's very sad to see that one horizontally, but at the same time, the amount of extra money that they were talking about requiring, you've got to look clearly at the board or and say, how on earth did you underestimate that much money? How? I know things went up in price, but like to me, there's a fair amount of incompetence in that. But at the same time, nickel went through the floor. Why? I don't know. There was oversupply of it. They didn't think there was going to be enough, and then there's an oversupply. Why? Probably because Russia bombarded the market with more nickel because it has most of the nickel in the world.
Yeah.
And if it does that, and China does the same thing as well, then they're doing this so that they can buy lots more assets cheaply, and also knowing that the people will depend on their nickel or their copper for a period of time and not do anything about it. Whereas
it's interesting.
I believe the Russians and the Chinese have got joined up thinking. So in other words, they're not just thinking about today and the price today, they're thinking about what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah. It's interesting that on that one, that horizontal, I was looking through some previous RNSs, and only on like the day after Boxing Day, which is only 4 months ago now, or 5 months ago, they actually had an interim $20 million funding package, which was signed between OMF Fund, the Orion Mine Finance, and actually Glencore, who were the sort of like, big investors in Horizonte, who I think they've got a maturity date like falls about 102 months from the 7th of December and like bears an interest at 15% per annum. What do you think will happen on this in this scenario? I know they've talked about the administrators being called in. Do you think that these funders, OMF and Glencore, will actually take this project for at a very, 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 very small premium, or not even a premium, but for a song?
Yeah, I think the fat lady has started to sing probably already, if the truth be known, whether it's them or somebody else. But
yeah, the
reality is probably the parties that are already involved are probably just going to step in and take over the underlying asset, you would imagine.
You think senior lenders would take that one, wouldn't you?
Yeah, for sure they would. Yeah, basically the shareholders are wiped out, so that's basically it. So yeah, it's not good, and there are risks involved in this period of time that we've gone through. But I say that on the basis that I really do believe we've gone through it. I think we're on the other side, and I think you're starting to see companies being able to raise money. A good example of that was probably the one we talked to, Kavango, who raised $3 million there recently. Share price has done pretty well since, gone up to 1.7, I think it was, 1.6. So, yeah, and there are other companies who are raising funds as well. I think that tells you, and I've been speaking to a few brokers in the city this week, and they were all of the mind, there's a bit more of a buzz about it. People who they haven't seen for a number of years, who pulled out the market, and now thinking, this is looking pretty interesting now. We're at the height of interest rates. Interest rates are probably only going one way, and that's down, even if they're not going down significantly. They're going down. And normally that's when the markets do well, as the markets, increase as interest rates start to decrease. So we will see, but that's the situation.
Let's move on to our guest this week. We're joined by Oliver Friesen, CEO of Golden Metal Resources. Welcome back, Oliver. Looks like you've had a good week in Nevada.
Yeah, it's been busy. How you guys doing?
Yeah, all good here. Yeah, Kev saying he's melting over there, and I'm sure you're in the middle of a desert right now. I mean, as you just alluded to earlier, it's probably cooler than it normally is, but I've certainly been out in Vegas in April, May, and it can get pretty damn hot there, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing about Garfield, and once you go further north to Nevada, you go up into the mountains. So it's sort of what you classify as a high desert. So it's usually about 5 to 10 degrees cooler in Hawthorne and the property than you would be in Vegas, but still very warm and dry.
Yeah, very dry. You need the old chapstick, don't you? Because it's surprising. So, exactly. I mean, for anyone who may have missed the news this week, on Wednesday you announced promising findings from the inversion modeling of magnetic geophysics survey data at the wholly owned Garfield project in Nevada's Walker Lane mineral belt. The results confirmed 2 significant buried magnetic anomalies that indicate potential porphyry copper targets at the power line zone and high-grade zone. These findings align with surface geochemical anomalies showing high copper concentrations, enhancing the project's prospects for discovering large-scale mineral deposits. So first you had the Pilot Mountain and then on to Garfield. So just tell us your thoughts on what you thought when how you reacted to the news that potentially Garfield is a porphyry now as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's been trending that way really since we did the first round of staking and the rock sampling results, which showed very high grade copper across a large area. So it was certainly trending that way. And each subsequent step gave us further confidence that there's a potential very exciting buried copper porphyry there, which is really what a lot of companies are hunting for in Western US right now with the price of copper doing what it's doing. So it was looking that way, and all the science continued to point us in that direction. But to have the actual inversion results, that was the big question mark, is because everything was sort of 2D at surface. And then now we've converted that to an actual 3D body and something that's at depth. So we've gone from 2D to the 3D space. That was a huge step up here, further increasing our confidence. So the timing was great. I was actually able to head out to site and walk some of those anomalies in some other areas there. So it was great to put that out on Monday and be there on Tuesday walking around and picking up high grade copper. So yeah, it's looking really good. And it's just another, couple of fantastic targets to add to the growing list of targets here that we have at Golden Medal.
Yeah. So I saw one of the videos you did, I think it was with Mark, where you were obviously in front of you were sort of hidden behind an area that was obviously a bit of shelter, so you didn't pick up a lot of wind noise on the mic. And you said, behind me, you can see the white on the outcrop, that's the Kibbe Basin. And I think you said to your west, it was like the desert scheelite. So just talk through that sort of that mental image that you now have of the whole of that area of that in Nevada, of the different assets. And is it, every time you go, are you sort of visualizing new areas and new strikes?
Totally. So what we did, and the video that I took, I was actually up kind of on a bit of a ridge there looking over, and I took the project geologists and a few other geologists who were around, some of the drillers and a few other bits and pieces. So we all kind of went up there, and now the story is really starting to come together, right? So when you first acquire an asset, you start to kind of build this narrative and this understanding as to what's going on. I was a geologist. I've spent a lot of time on these type of deposits, skarns, porphyries, but as I mentioned many times, they kind of work together. So to stand up there on the ridge, look at Kibbe Basin to my right, and lithium basins are often associated with proximal porphyry deposits as well. So it all kind of fits together. So to stand there on this ridge and look out and see literally the drill on site, I can see the outline of desert scheelite, I can see the historical open pit. I have my project geologist go stand on the porphyry south kind of magnetic anomaly, 400 meters kind of down slope. Then we have all the drilling roads in the background. So there's a few geologists there, and I kind of walked them through the story, and they're kind of their mouths just dropped. They're like, this just makes so much sense, right? I mean, it's almost out of a textbook to see the skarns there and where they are and where we think a potential porphyry is. So geologically, it's all coming together. Obviously, we have to go and drill it and see what's there, but it's coming together. My knowledge continues to increase, and the more data we collect, it all kind of just fits in. So it's a puzzle that's coming together, and it's making a lot of sense, and it's really exciting, and looking forward to advancing it and getting some more results to see if it all ties in as we continue to push it forward.
So Oliver, give us a rundown of what you did during the week then. Obviously there's Pilot Mountain, and obviously the starting of the drilling, and then obviously Garfield. So how did you spend your time while you were there?
Yeah, so it was a combination of different things. So first and foremost, I mean, the reason that I go is, number one, to meet everyone. Obviously, we're calling shots from in London, and that's 8-hour time difference away. So it's important for me to go and show face and actually introduce myself, walk the project, kind of meet all the guys and understand who they are, because I'm going to be dealing with them directly for the entire duration of the program. So that's probably the most important thing that I did there, was just to meet everyone, have dinner, take them out for lunch, that type of thing. On top of that, as I mentioned, I spent 2 days on Garfield. And we can talk a bit more about what I did there probably next time we speak. But one of the days I spent actually walking those magnetic anomalies, seeing that high-grade copper at surface to understand what it looks like. So that was a couple of days that were really productive. And I think I put out a photo of me standing on a mound of high-grade copper there, I think on one of the days where copper hit an all-time high. So it was very sort of serendipitous. And then most importantly was just getting the drill program started, and really to set the guys up for success. So the great thing about this project is, because it was, explored quite extensively historically, there's a fantastic ore logging facility in Hawthorne, probably the best I've actually ever seen. It hadn't been really touched since 2018, so we get to go in there and clean out the birds' nests and kind of clean it up and get it in good shape. But it's in fantastic shape now. The guys are fully set up there with the office and the logging facilities. And then on top of that, spent a lot of time on property, walking around, because I haven't really been there for quite some time here. Obviously, so much has developed since then. So now that we have all these further results, to actually go and be able to walk these zones, see the rocks at surface, is a huge advantage. So I spent a lot of time on the drill. soil, meeting the guys, obviously looking at the core coming out of the ground, but just, standing on that ridge and really just looking over the property and going, okay, yes, this makes sense. And this is where this is. And then, coming up with a really, great plan with our project geologists to make sure that we have, we put our best foot forward here to have some success with this program. So it was a busy one, met a lot of guys and just accomplished a lot. So I'll definitely be back, hopefully sooner rather than later, but the guys are set up, things are running really smoothly, and we have all the kind of lines of communication set up here for success as we go forward.
And tell us a little bit more about what Pilot Mountain was doing in World War II in terms of the tungsten.
Yes, I mean it was a producer of tungsten for the U.S. military, and I believe at the time there was another tungsten mine, I think in California. But during wartime, it was sort of all hands on deck to make sure that everyone contributed to the wartime effort. And there's I would say medium-sized open pit that exists on Pilot Mountain in the desert scheelite zone, and that's where they were mining the tungsten to support the war effort. So obviously, I think it really signifies the criticality of the project back then, and with everything that's going on now, and the huge push. I mean, there's been a massive development in nuclear fusion and the usage of tungsten. So there's all these new high-tech uses. Obviously, there's still the military application that's very important, but there's so much. The metal itself has just evolved so much since the 1940s when it was in production. And obviously, we're looking to really vastly increase the size of the target that they were going after. So, but it was interesting to go there and go to the old mill site and see what they were doing there. It was actually a pretty sizable operation. Obviously, we're looking to do something much bigger, but just to see how important this asset was back then. And I think the criticality of this project now is probably even surpassed that, or potentially and not too far away from what it was back then. So the timing's great, and it was interesting to go and kind of take a walk down memory lane a little bit.
And in terms of the amount of tungsten in ground at the minute, you can specify what amount now, and what do you hope to discover in these other places that you're drilling?
Yeah, so we have 12.53 million tons, 0.27% tungsten trioxide. Now that has pretty significant copper, silver, and zinc. And I've tweeted out a few times the actual quantum of copper and silver specifically in the ground, because the prices of those two metals has gone up quite considerably. Actually, just on that, the price of tungsten has gone up more than any of the other metals, and yet very few people are talking about that yet. So that was just interesting to note that all those kind of costings and pricings have gone up quite significantly.
Silver's had a really good run of late, hasn't it? Sort of busting towards the $30. And actually, one of the uses I saw of silver, which was interesting, was actually use in nuclear reactors as well. So, that was very interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been an absolutely incredible week. It was actually the timing was quite funny to be out there drilling for tungsten, copper, and silver, and to see the price of those two metals, and especially on the Friday closer, was pretty wild. So the timing is great. It's all kind of come together. But what we're looking to do here is we have the existing in-ground resource. It is the largest undeveloped tungsten deposit on U.S. soil. And as we've mentioned many times, there's conversations ongoing in the background about securing or trying to secure non-dilutive funding from the U.S. government. So that work stream is fully going ahead. And just a thing to note here is that even if we didn't find another ounce of metal anywhere else in the property, what we have in the ground at Desert Scheelite is incredibly valuable and incredibly strategic right now, given the current circumstances, and something that, as I mentioned, we're looking to secure funding and push that forward, the development of that forward. So, the great thing about gold and metal is sort of the way we've hedged the projects in the company, in that we have a great, really valuable in-ground resource to lean back on. And obviously, align with that. And in parallel, we're going to be looking to make new discoveries. But even if we didn't hit anything, and obviously with the inventory of targets that we have now, we feel confident in what we're doing with those targets, and that we could find something pretty exciting. Even if we didn't find another ounce of metal, what we have in the ground there is very strategic and important and valuable, and allows us to push that forward and make sure that the valuation of the company is sort of bookended or supported by what we have in the ground right now. So it's a great setup. A lot of companies, that I follow, it's sort of very, grassroots exploration. And if they don't hit, the valuation can kind of really have to reset. But here we already have something very, very valuable that we're pushing forward. And we're going to add a lot of value to that existing deposit. But on top of that, we're drilling some exciting targets as well, and looking to make new discoveries, because that's what we're here to do, is to hopefully return to our shareholders that big return that they come to this space for.
What is the potential percentage of copper at Pilot Mountain? Are we talking, 0.3 to 5%, 1%? What potentially is already there before you prove up any of this new stuff?
Yeah, so the existing resource, Pilot Mountain, has a copper grade of 0.2%, and it's a byproduct. So the tungsten grade is the most important thing. It's about 60% of revenue would come from tungsten, but that's a byproduct. So we would produce that at pretty much zero cost, and that's a great grade of copper as a byproduct, 0.2%. So that's what we have right now in the ground. It is recoverable. We've done the metallurgy to show that it's a very nice concentrate that's produced. Now, what we're looking for is first of all, additional skarn zones. Now, if we are successful in intersecting one, I don't know what that copper grade would be, but I'd imagine it would probably be similar to desert scheelite. And then the other big question is, okay, well, where has all this metal come from? I mean, skarn deposits are associated with porphyry, so that's always been the model all along. And once again, standing on that ridge and seeing where desert scheelite extends to, and then looking at where the magnetic target is, geologically, it just makes sense that would be the magnetic target, or the porphyry that provided all the it's the heat engine, so to say, or all the fluid flow that allowed for desert scheelite and the other zones to take place. So drilling for that porphyry south target, the magnetics show that there's some sort of buried target there. And we have the IP that further confirms what we expect, and the proximity to the skarn zone. So we don't know what we're going to find down there, obviously, until we go and drill it, but that's going to be part of this program. We're going to go down and get there. So hopefully we find a copper tungsten porphyry, and if we do, that would be a huge result. But right now it's great because we have a lot of contained copper at desert scheelite, which has a grade of about 0.2%. And just so everyone is aware, minable grades of copper alone, if you had no other metals, we're talking kind of 0.3, 0.4, 0.5% in an open pit scenario. So even the copper alone is almost kind of at that level without the consideration of the tungsten, silver, zinc.
Yeah, sounds very good. Tell us just a bit about the administration things that happened last week. So you had the end of the warrants. Basically, I think a good number came in after that. So can you tell us any more details about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a very big week for us. I was on the top of the mountain many times trying to glare into my phone. We had a bit of service there, so trying to just clean up all the last bits of warrants. But yeah, the expiry date was May 10th, which was a year after we listed, which was also your birthday there, Kev. So happy belated. But it was great to get that deadline passed, because obviously there was a lot of warrants coming in. We had some success with the share price. So that warrant deadline is passed now. Brought in just over 1.7 million pounds, which is fantastic. Our three biggest shareholders all exercise their warrants as well, which I think is a huge vote of confidence to what we're doing here. So they all increase their stake as we move through drilling here, and what should be a really exciting time for the company. So that gives us a really, really nice cash injection, and gives us the flexibility to drill more meters here if we drill into something pretty exciting. So we're in a great position financially. The warrant deadline is passed, so I think that kind of provided there was a bit of selling pressure leading up to that deadline. So that's moved past now. Drilling is obviously it's a really exciting time, and there's a lot of other stuff going on at Garfield. So exciting time for the company, and it was a great week in Nevada here, getting it all set up.
Yeah, and we recorded this on Saturday evening. So, and obviously your Saturday lunchtime in Nevada. So things did go a bit crazy on Friday afternoon. GMET finished at 16p close, which was good. I don't know that that's an all-time high close, but it's certainly above where it has been in the last few weeks, so it's starting to move up. We had silver go bananas, hit $32, I think, at one point. And I know we recorded our other bit on Friday morning, and it was $30 and no more. And copper has just finished at just shy of $10,600 a ton, okay? And we've got Goldman Sachs talking about copper 12,000 by the end of this year, and averaging in excess of 12,500 next year is what they predict because of these problems.
We were just talking about that, weren't we, Kev, about that short squeeze. Did you see that news, Oliver, about Trafigura? I think it was an IXM were caught in a COMEX copper short in the week, and basically they're looking to buy physical copper now to deliver against these sort of large short positions in the US. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of following the news. I mean, it's if you kind of listen to a few really well-known names in the industry, they've been pounding the table about this short position, this paper short position that a lot of these banks hold. So I think we're now starting to see, there's been cracks for a while, but I think now we're really starting to see this foundation break down here. And I mean, to see a move, I think it was up almost 6.8%, 6.8%.
US prices were way above the rest of the world, weren't they?
Oh, I mean, what a move, right? And I think it potentially is just the beginning here, and it just really, we're starting to see what these bankers have been doing for many, many years now, manipulating prices, selling down paper. But the kind of the gig's up here, and really the overall, the demand for copper, silver, tungsten, all these metals is continuing to move up here, which is ultimately squeezing these guys out. So it's really exciting. And Kev, you mentioned kind of the closing prices of all those metals. Well, the UK market was shut by the time those moves kind of made their final bits here. So it's exciting to see how things open up in the UK on Monday. But I know a lot of the names in US and Canada did really, really well on the back of that huge move. So the timing is looking exciting here. And just on that, I just pulled up the table here just to show you guys, the contained metal that we have in just the silver and copper. Well, we have 6.6 million ounces of silver as a byproduct in just desert scheelite alone without drilling any more holes. So obviously, the price moves that we're seeing here is greatly increasing the in situ value of just the silver alone. Then we have 16,000 tons of contained copper as well at 0.2%. You mentioned the pricing of copper. So the value of the in situ metal is increasing quite substantially here, and the tungsten price is up about 14% in the last 3 weeks as well. So it's an exciting time here, and I think GMET's positioned perfectly.
Yeah, I suppose my final question would be: we're just over a year ago since you started this company. Could you have envisaged, dreamed, or whatever word you want to use, that you would have found this much resource in both Garfield and Pilot Mountain, and also a lithium asset, and you haven't even touched the gold assets yet? Could you have believed this?
I mean, if you had kind of presented this scenario back when I listed, I certainly would have taken it, given kind of where the market was at the time. So, we've been very successful in the market here. I think we've created a fantastic name for ourselves. Share price has done well. We've maintained our fantastic shareholding. So, we're happy with the progress, but, I think we're just getting started here. And I didn't come here to get the share price from 8 to 16 and then kind of call it quits. I mean, we come into this space and I put my name on a company for the opportunity to do something much bigger than that. So, in terms of market cap, we're still only sort of 14 million pounds, which I think in the grand scheme of things, if we can execute on some of our goals here, I think that number is quite small, but I need to go and continue to execute. So we've created a name for ourselves over the last year, and we've built some confidence in the market. But now it's kind of the rubber meets the road here, and it's about drilling these exciting targets. And if even one of them hits, that could be really transformational. And as I mentioned there, with what we have in the ground right now, increasing in value daily, that's a great backdrop as well. So super excited about the last year and proud of what we've accomplished. But we're really just getting started here, and there's a lot more we need to do for me to consider this a success at Gold Medal.
Yeah, £100 million market cap this time next year. Is it possible?
I shouldn't be in this position if I didn't say it. If I didn't say it could be possible. So we're quite bullish on where we're going here. Obviously, there's a lot of things we need to do and have some success with the drill bit. But you look at kind of comparables and other names in the space, and where they're going and where they could go if metal prices continue to go up. So we're very bullish, and we think there's a lot of value we can add here over the next year and couple of years here as we push this forward.
Yeah, that was very diplomatically well not answered, Oliver. But
getting better at that as well, Oliver. I've noticed.
Yeah, I've noticed you're getting better at not answering the questions. But I understand you. I understand you actually can't answer the question, but we like to ask that anyway. Okay, no, I think we're very happy that you were one of our 12 stocks that we picked, and you're currently still leading the way. The question is, will you be leading the way at the end of the year? You've got a few nipping at your heels now because there's 2 or 3, and actually both of them are copper plays as well. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen over the next period of time, because I do think the resource sector is going to boom. Even UK smaller companies in the resource sector is going to boom over the next 12, 18, 24 months. I can't see how it won't.
Yeah, the timing is now, gents. I mean, it's the last kind of 6 to 9 months. It's like, are we here yet? Is the bull market kind of taking hold? No, we're here now. People are positioning accordingly. And in terms of being in the lead right now and where we stand at the end of the year, I'm certainly up for the challenge. So I'm looking forward to it.
Great.
Oliver Friesen, CEO of Gold and Metal Resources. Thanks very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, safe flight back to England.
Yes, thank you guys. Chat soon.
Okay, let's have a look at some of the movers and shakers this week. I think that, as I alluded to earlier on, that the best performer was Castillo Copper, that was up some 50%. But another one that we've talked about in the past is Incantera. They're up about 40% on the week, so they've had quite a good run. quite a lot of volume came in on it. So I think mainly the rise in the share price has been related to the fact that there was a bit of a buzz about the fact that they were presenting at the Proactive 1-to-1 Investor Forum in London on the Thursday of this week at 6 p.m. And there was good volume. I was looking at the trades that were coming in. In fact, I was looking on the 15th of this week. It was the 14th. There was some trades that were not published until the 15th. So looking at SharePad, it says published on the 15th. Two of them, one of them was for 503,000. They were both the same amount, 503,167. One at 15.141 and the other one at 15.135. So totaled about £76,000 trades that were then published the following day, and that sort of coincided with the next day's action. And then there was a big move up, I think, on the day before they announced that they were actually, in fact, yesterday, or the Thursday, that they were going to the investor show in London. There was a big spike in the volume, 50,000 clips. There was about 10,000, quite a lot of small trades, around the sort of 2,000 to 4,000 pounds. But it moved them from about 15, 16 pence starting price at 8 a.m. through to 20 pence, 20.7 pence was the highest trade of the day. And then on Friday, there was quite a good action. Again, there was a few trades around the £4,000, and that kept them around the 20 pence. So great performance on that one.
Yeah, I think that big trade you talked about, though, was probably better than ISA or some sort of capital gains tax scenario.
Yeah, it could have been.
It was basically just a difference of 30 quid, wasn't it, in the trade?
Yeah, could have been, but there has been quite a lot of institutional buying, as we've seen with the likes of Tyndall, so nothing would surprise me in this one. Suzanne was on a message from her basically saying, thank you for the interest. There's obviously no new news on investor presentation. Obviously, otherwise that would have been issued in an RNS. The presentation that they gave was shared to the website that was announced in the RNS Reach. Tim, the chairman, talked about it, and there was a new retail investor audience, obviously organised by Proactive, 5 companies presenting, and I'm sure everyone there is familiar with the format. I've attended myself. It's very, very good. It's at the Chesterfield Hotel, so I'd recommend it to anybody who wants to learn more about any potential stocks that they are interested in or maybe are invested in. But they said it was absolutely brilliant energy in the room. Some holders who had bought in yesterday, that was on the Thursday that I just alluded to, they came to see them. There's some existing shareholders in the room as well. But total fascination at the deal. Obviously, the deal, talking about the Marionor deal, and an update in March and the potential. So pull up the presentation. I think they finished the presentations around about 8 o'clock, but they were still surrounded by the people in the room at 10 o'clock. The momentum and potential was really there. So it was so good to be in the room and talking to people live and seeing the reactions. A very excited buzz and lots of potential new shareholders, given the amount that asked for details of how to buy in. Really good evening. And they are also going to be presenting again mid-June at the AJ Bell Investor Evening. So anybody who potentially, missed that event in London at with Proactive, try and sign up for the AJ Bell Investor Evening, and there'll be details posted in a similar RNS ahead of time. Thanks, everyone, and have a lovely weekend. That was from Suzanne Brox, who's the head of investor relations there. So she's great. It was great to see her and chat to her yesterday. So great news on Incanterra, and I just feel like the momentum is there, and I'd like to see more announcements in due course on that one, just to sort of keep things moving.
Yeah, and as you've suggested, you are very happy that we put that on our 5 gold rings.
Yeah.
Currently in and around the 20p mark when we suggested it was 6.5p. So currently up by 200%. So yeah, and actually I think the journey's only just begun.
Yeah.
This is a company that has got expected EBIT by the end of 2024 of £10 million. And it probably has a market cap of somewhere in the region of £20 million at this moment in time. And it has an expected EBITDA of £30 to £50 million next year.
Yeah.
So the reality is it can't stay this cheap. There isn't that, it's one of those shares now that is very tightly held and people aren't selling it. We're shareholders ourselves, have been since the 6.5p, and, have no intention of selling it right now because in my view, this isn't going to be in pence. This is going to be in pounds. in 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years. Obviously, when it gets to that level, then you want to be taking some profit probably. But the reality of the situation is this looks like it's going to be a commodity that sells with a very, very healthy profit margin, I think. And subsequently, that's even before they take on the rest of the world. This is Europe and Asia, whereas what we've also got is the US, you've got the Middle East, you've got South America, you've got Australasia still to be assessed just with this product range. And then, which they don't want to talk about too much at the minute, but then you've got the chance that this becomes a pharma play, So these are just the initial plays. And then if they have the cash to take the product through to the pharma stage to be an oncology play and an oncology delivery system, because that's basically what this is. It's a delivery system to deliver things that can go into our skin cells. Yeah, I think maybe not the sky's the limit, but yeah. It could certainly scratch an itch, and the pun is intended.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very exciting, that one. And I think we talked about this, didn't we, before, that Aquis gets a bit of stick, doesn't it, for its, I can't trade it in this. It's, from an electronic point of view, in terms of instant prices, quotes, RSPs, maybe it is lacking a bit to some of the other exchanges like AIM and Standard List. But ultimately, sometimes that kind of lack of ability to affect a trade like immediately maybe gives a buffer to some of the sort of fluctuations in share price we see on some of these exchanges. Maybe does it act as a bit of a security to buffer of small trades drop in the price?
Yeah, I think there's I certainly believe that there is a bit of a changing of the guard here between AIM and Aquis. I think Aquis is now becoming to the point where it's more and more companies are realizing it's sort of half the price to list on it. And secondly, I think it's probably better run, as in you can't have the wild west on Aquis, whereas you can on AIM, with all sorts of shorting and all the rest of it. Shorting is not allowed on Aquis. You cannot short a stock. Yeah, I think there is a movement now where I think they're going to start talking about that. And we've been talking also to some people from Aquis as well. So we're looking to try and bring them on and explain what they're trying to achieve to you guys on the podcast. So let's hope we can organise that in the next few years.
I think from, again, we've seen a glut of companies delisting from AIM in the last, let's call it month, because it started about a month ago, and then it's like a snowball effect. Trigger 1 does it, 2, 3, 4, and we've seen probably a handful, maybe 10 to 12 companies. Even this morning on the Friday morning, there was another one that proposed delisting because of the cost of maintaining the listing on AIM. And one of the other things he says is lack of capital available. Basically, there's no liquidity, and there is also very little capital moving around in the markets. And why do they go to market? Well, they go there because they want to raise capital to further the company. Now, what's the point in spending £500,000 on an AIM listing if you've no liquidity? You've got the extremely expensive cost just to maintain the listing every year, and you can't raise any capital. It's no wonder they're going private.
Yeah, either private or, as you say, reducing the costs.
Yeah,
until they get to a level where they can jump AIM and go straight to the main market, which is 30 million market capitalization.
And demonstrable revenues, which you're not going to get as an exploring, mining exploration company, are you?
Yeah, and the other thing with we have had some successes on Aquis. I think you've got to point at some of the bigger companies that have come from there, and we're going to talk about in the future as well, and see if we can guide people and show them that there is some alternatives. I think the big thing is that the ability to quickly electronically trade, and I think that's changing fast as well. I think on a lot of the boards now, on II, on Hargreaves, on IG, I think you can trade these stocks now electronically. So it's becoming easier. If you try it, you can see certainly within Quintero. But anyway, moving on, another mover this week, and I have to say, because it's obviously one of my favorites, is African Pioneer. as we record this, African Pioneer was 2.89p. So it was up, I think, around to 20% or more this week. We've seen a bit of volume come into it. And again, it's going to be tightly held. This is going to move quickly. Still only market cap of £5-6 million, I think it is. For what it has, the land packages that it has in northwest Zambia, it's worth several times what the market cap is, without doubt, in my view. And also on Gombo in Namibia, which we visited recently as well, and licenses in Botswana as well. Just look at the copper price. Look at all of that. This whole company is designed around copper and some gold credits. Why wouldn't it be worth more than this?
Yeah.
Colin Bird has positioned himself in all of these companies with great copper assets in those countries, Botswana, Namibia, and Zambia. And if you had to choose countries in Africa that should be fairly stable and allow these things to happen, you've got number one as Botswana, probably number two is Namibia, and number three is Zambia in terms of the places where you'd want to be. Now, where's the most copper? It's in Zambia. So you have to be in that situation. But it could be that these companies never actually mine any of this copper, but are still worth hundreds of millions because someone's going to come in and mine this copper.
Yeah.
So there you go. What else is there this week then before we say goodbye?
Celadon had an RNS, didn't they? Basically, there was the final results, the final audited results, basically for the year ending December 31st. They talked about the achievements, obviously the registration of the Midlands facility for the GMP manufacturing, which we've talked about in the past. They've also got the updated Home Office license, allowing the commercial sales of the THC products, and then 3 significant customer contracts, potentially worth over £34 million in revenue. They also received the REC approval for a chronic pain study, and obviously advancing the fit-out of their Phase 2 facility. Financially, you can't really base them on that, but the revenues of 75,000, an operating loss of about 5 million, and a reduced pre-tax loss from the previous year. And they ended the year with 1.259 million in cash, securing a £7 million credit facility and raised 5.1 million in equity. So yeah, Jim, obviously in the RNS, he highlighted the strategic progress, regulatory achievements, a strong sales pipeline, expressing confidence in the transformative potential of the product for patient care. So what do you make of it? Do you think it's that, looking at those results, not amazing in terms of revenues, but do you think that going forward they're going to start getting some of these and actually maybe potentially changing these 3 significant customer contracts that are potentially worth over 34 million in revenue? You're going to start to see some fruits from that.
Yeah, I think they're going to come in this week. I spoke with Jim briefly on the phone this week, and I think we're going to get him on the roast next week, possibly. So I think there's things afoot, and I think if again you've got a 64 million pound company with potentially 34 million pounds of revenue that should come in.
Yeah.
And so based on the figures you just talked about, which was sort of 5-6 million pound loss, let's say that's 10 million pound loss, it suddenly becomes a 25 million pound profit. So how much is Celadon worth just on that situation if they don't do anything else, which they obviously are going to do something else. Again, this is another thing. I mean, it's a bit like Incanterra is what I'm saying. They're selling the strains of cannabis for all of these things, but ultimately Celadon is going to be a pharma play, and that pharma play is not worth millions. It's normally worth billions because this market is massive, for pain relief, for the autism, for many different things that can be done. Celadon has a license in the UK to do this, and it's not the only one, but I think it's one of the ones that is set up to do this very well. So I don't see anything but positive things ahead, really, to be honest. And when you see, less than sort of 3 years ago, Celadon was up there at £3 a share, and it's now sitting at £1 a share. And all of the progress that it's made, it's a bit crazy, really, to be honest.
Yeah, there was another one, wasn't there, in that space. And that was Hellenic Dynamics, that they're a medical cannabis cultivator that specializes in the THC dominant strains. I think they announced that they'd amended the mezzanine loan facility agreement that they've got in place with Riverfort. They originally secured up to like $3 million, and they drew down 450,000 US and repaid 135,000. And then there was a recent 1 million euro long-term loan and fundraise allowing deferral of payments due from June to September. I'm not sure really what to make. Are they in a similar vein to Celadon with that?
No, I think they're a growing facility.
Yeah, cultivator rather than an actual.
They're a cultivator, in my view anyway, they're a cultivator rather than the potential to be a farms on play. That doesn't mean they couldn't morph into that, but effectively, from looking at it, it's how much of this stuff can we grow?
Yeah.
As Charles keeps saying in his group, we still haven't seen a picture of them growing the stuff.
Yeah.
So
where would you be putting your money? Would you go 50-50? What would you split it, or would you prefer one over the other?
Having visited the facilities in the Midlands, and having spoken to Jim, I'm sorry I'd put all my money in Celadon.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I've never seen the facility.
And maybe I don't know enough about Elder, if I'm honest. But you put me on the spot and you're asking me a question, I'd say, I think better play and a safer play is what Celadon has.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at them from the listing, they came in with a valuation. They're at like 1.85p with a 2.6 million cap, so it's not like a high market cap on that at the moment.
Yeah.
I
think that's what a lot of people have been saying as well in the groups, haven't they? That it's got such a low market cap that actually it's got really good upside potential, and I think that's true.
Yeah,
but I'm answering the question based on my experience and the fact that I've been to the Celadon facilities. And also, I think just the whole way that they're approaching it from a tech perspective and from a pharmaceutical perspective in terms of doing the trials and those type of things, those things are going to pay huge amounts of dividends, I think, over the next sort of 5 to 10 years. I can see Celadon being worth billions in the future, and probably won't be on the UK market if we're honest.
Yeah.
Because basically there is more scope for a company like that to go on the NASDAQ. Probably.
Yeah. Sovereign Metals had a good one out in the
yes.
They basically came out with the news that about the CASIA. They basically stated that they'd done the successful downstream test work results, which demonstrate high quality graphite suitable for lithium-ion batteries conducted at the Pro Graphite GmbH in Germany. The test work involved producing spherical purified graphite, SPG, from CASIA graphite concentrate, achieving world-leading specifications and exceptionally low levels of impurities with a 99.99% loss on ignition. The SPG met all the industry standards with spheronization yields up to 68%, indicating potential for further optimization. Currently, this SPG is being processed further to coat and test electrochemical performances as coated spherical purified graphite for use as an active anode material in lithium-ion batteries, marking significant progress in Sovereign's strategy to commercialize graphite for this sector. Now, remember in the past, lithium-ion batteries should not potentially be called lithium-ion batteries because they contain more graphite than they do lithium, which is madness when you consider it. So people really do underestimate the amount of graphite that is actually in these lithium-ion batteries for whether it be for the EV space or whatever else it is. So, yeah, very interesting that it does look like the quality, that the graphite that they're getting is really demonstrating how high quality it is.
Yep. Oh, we were trying to speak to Sapan this week, didn't manage to get.
Well, he's been in Malawi, hasn't he? So he's been a busy man. He's been down to site. He's been doing various things down there. So I think it's been understandable that he's not been available for a chat. But we did catch up with him a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? It was good to have a chat on the progress on the new hires.
Yep.
Anything else you want to talk about? I think we've pretty much done.
Well, by the time you're listening to this, the last day of the Premier League season will be taking place or have taken place, and all those Arsenal fans who were praying that Tottenham were going to beat Manchester City and Son's clear through, he's clear through, it's...
Yeah, but even more emotionally on Sunday, we saw Klopp's final game. I mean, how are you feeling about that? There was a great article on a piece on the news this morning I watched about him and how a lot of the Liverpudlians feel about him. They feel he is a pure Scouser. They feel that, his respect he has when he's shown up at some of these tributes to Hillsborough. He's known so much about it. They feel that he is actually. There was one pie shop they visited where they've got this Klopp pie named after him. I think it was a steak and ale pie. And it's like they're saying that how much they feel. And some of the letters he sent to some of these fans over the years have been remarkable. So big up the Klopp.
Yeah, I think it's a very happy day and a very sad day all in one. It's like it's very sad that he's not staying a bit longer. But in some ways, I think the whole time that has taken time for everybody to digest that he's leaving, and looks like Arnie Slot is coming in. They put the backroom staff back in, all the people who were deciding lots of things that basically I think they got rid of because Klopp wanted to control those things. So I think, I'm confident Liverpool's going to be run pretty well. Whether we have the same dynamism on the pitch, I don't know. We fell away rather badly, but we're finished third now. Big up for Aston Villa qualifying for the Champions League. Like, amazing. As it Emery having been booted out at Arsenal without being given the fair chance, I think is.
I mean, what a comeback against your team as well. Wow, 3-3.
Comeback to prove it.
In front of Tom Hanks, who was there. He appears to be their one fan now.
Yeah, absolutely. And so who's going to win the league here? You're going to put it up? Manchester City.
Absolutely. City are not going to give this away. I mean, to go into that final day today with a 2-point lead, they're not going to throw it away. I cannot see City throwing it away. I'm sorry. I mean, no, not going to happen.
Okay, you heard it here first. I think West Ham are going to get a draw and Arsenal will win the league.
Well, I mean, no one's going to compete with their goal difference, right?
No, there's only one goal in it now. But if Manchester City draw, Arsenal win. Arsenal win the league.
City, not with the momentum they've got going now. I very much cannot see that. So, City, well done for that. And Liverpool, as far as I'm concerned, you were in the driving seat. I'm gutted for you in a way because of Klopp. I think it would have been great.
Yeah, we were in the driving seat, but we didn't. You're only in the driving seat. You win all the games. We didn't win all the games, so that was it. And by now we will know whether Mr. Fury or Usyk is the world undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. So who do you think is going to win that one?
I'd like to say that Fury's gonna do it, but I just think sometimes his cockiness and it can be his downfall. And I know Usyk, as I said to you before, the tenacity and the grit that guy has got over. I've seen him perform over the years. I think he's a very, very good fighter, technical fighter. I'm gonna go with Usyk, but I really, for the hope of British boxing, that Fury he does it. I just don't like watching some of Fury's dad, the way he behaves in Saudi, like headbutting that young lad. I just think I really, really do not like the whole entourage and the way that his father behaves. I think he does. He's not doing the Fury camp any favors.
No, he's not. He's a despicable individual, basically, based on what he did.
Yeah, I mean, gouging someone's eyes out in the past and doing time for it shows you that he's quite a risky individual.
No, he is, and very, 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 very arrogant, and you can understand where a bit of Fury himself's arrogance comes from. But at the same time, he seems to be a lot more grounded than he ever has been. Yeah, I am the same as you. I actually think that probably Usyk's going to win, but I would really like Fury to win. I think Usyk is by far the superior boxer.
And then we'll see him finally actually throw his, is he going to retire? I mean, Fury has said after pretty much every win, that is it, final, not doing any more. And then 6 months.
No, he's going to carry on for sure. Win or lose, he will carry on, I'm sure. Yeah. And I think, if Fury does win, the big fight against Joshua Fury is going to be a monster fight, especially if it's for the undisputed championship.
Yeah.
Again, I'd actually think Fury will beat Joshua, to be honest with you, because I don't think Joshua's that skillful a boxer. He's a big puncher, but not that skillful a boxer. But we will see. We will see.
Yeah.
We've got a Grand Prix this weekend as well, I think, have we? I'm not sure where that's from, but there's a Grand Prix going on.
Yeah, Grand Prix. There's a few events around the UK.
What's happening?
Well, just event. I mean, you've got the golf as well. We just seen the news that your man was detained by the police just before with it.
I think that was Rory McIlroy knows the police officer, I think, and he wanted to get him arrested and shake him up so that he didn't win.
And if anyone's got Netflix, this is a recommendation. I mean, if you've not seen it, I'm sure you probably have seen it by now, but you've got to watch Baby Reindeer. It is one of the most compelling series I've watched. It's disturbing and also emotional at the same time. I mean, from an uplifting point of view, it's finally what happens. But ultimately, it's disturbing. Go into it with your eyes open, and yeah, it is a very powerful drama. And you've probably seen what happens without giving too much away. But Piers Morgan finally got an interview with one of the subjects of this drama. But it's all very much more real because the person who's actually the subject, the victim, let's say, plays the victim in the series. So it's like the guy who actually experienced this in real life is acting it out. So it adds an extra level of realism to it. So if you've not seen it, pull up a chair at the weekend this evening and watch a Baby Reindeer, available on Netflix. Other than that, I think we'll say we've talked long enough. If you like what we've heard, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you get any notifications of any future episodes.
Thanks for listening, guys.
This podcast was brought to you by Roast PR Limited. If you would like to appear on a future episode of The Sunday Roast, please email admin@thesundayroast.net.